Welcome to the Happy Rant podcast. I am Ted Cluck, joined as always in studio by my good friend and partner in radio, Barnabas Piper. Pipe, we are Ronless this morning, and
this time it's my fault, not Ron's. Like, Ron actually isn't doing anything exciting. It's just that I'm going to be traveling on our normal recording schedule, so we had to work around it. So it's not Retreat Man striking again.
It's an odd role reversal, isn't it? Like, Retreat Man is at home, probably feeling glum and forlorn, and you're out on the road living the life that he should be living. It's really strange.
The difference between Ron and me is that I think I prefer being at home, and he prefers being at a Hyatt Place in somewhere in Middle America or Jupiter.
Dude,
Florida.
we gotta get our boy on the road again, man. He needs to be traveling. He does better radio when he's on the road.
Yeah, I think we had one episode in the last few weeks where he had just come back from a trip, maybe like that morning, and he was still kind of riding high. But there's been a fair amount of like glum Ron.
I know, man. I don't like glum Ron. We got to get him back out on the road, away from some of the pressures that are mounting in Ashland. You know, and again, that's not news that we can break just yet on the program, Piper. But there are some things happening behind the scenes. Ashland as a metro area is just changing. And this happens. Cities change. The tapestry of a place changes, and I feel like our boy is going to have some things to deal with there soon. But
some large personalities moving to town, which it's a classic like this town ain't big enough for the both of us situation, and
right,
it's going to be high noon in no time.
Dude, it's going to be high noon, kind of an OK Corral sort of vintage hipster showdown there in Ashland with both men in their tight jeans, kind of waddling down the street at high noon.
What does high noon look like when there's sort of two like pacifist hipster non-combatants? Exactly.
Here's what I think it looks like. I think they wander out into the middle of the street, each with like a carefully crafted like latte in their hands, and they just sort of go, well, I mean, maybe they just sort of stammer around at one another for a few minutes and then wander back into wherever it is that they came from. That's high noon for a hipster.
And then they mutter insults about how the other guy looks like he might listen to Coldplay or something.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. A hipster showdown is like all nuance and no go. You know what I mean?
Nobody actually makes a point. They just sort of
makes a point.
Vague cultural references to things they consider sellout.
That's right. Nobody makes a statement of any kind. It's just all nuance and no go. But
it sounds a lot like some churches I've attended in the past. Nobody actually makes any definitive statements. There's just a lot of vague references to pseudo biblical things.
Well, that's the world we live in. I mean, it's hard to make a definitive statement anymore, Piper, in this world without being labeled just a horrible person. But far be it from us to get glum about that. We do have some actual big personalities to talk about on the program today. So I look forward to getting into that with you. I know that you saw a movie last night that I'm eager to talk about with you. But before we do that, I want to talk about venues and I want to talk about spaces. And I'm confident that this week's sponsor could, if you needed it, they could recreate like a high noon at the OK Corral scenario, because that's how good these venues are. So, Pipe, tell us about our sponsor this week.
Our sponsor is Noah Event Venue. So it's I don't think it's actually Noah's Event Venue, because that implies like somebody named Noah owns it. It's just Noah is the name of the company. So Noah Event Venue.
I've been saying that wrong for months now.
Yeah, I think I've said it wrong and right, sort of alternating. But it's my truth, so I get to if it works for me, it works for me. So Noah Event Venue is a company that they own buildings and venues across the country, where they lease them out to people who need them for, anything from like weddings and stuff like that, but also to churches who can use them on a weekly basis. So you can set up a long-term lease. They have meeting spaces, classroom spaces, kitchen spaces, parking, all the things that you would need for a church who is expanding or starting a new campus or a recent church plant, any of the things that would make a church need a new venue. If you're tired of meeting at the local high school and using their facility where everything kind of stinks like locker room and sort of spoiled milk. These venues are very clean and very classy and very nice. So if you're in a church in that spot, you can go to noaheventvenue.com/church to get all the information about it.
Or if you're a hipster and you're sick of your venue smelling like, leather aprons and espresso and moss on the wall.
So here's a question about that. Do you think hipsters even notice that smell, or are they like? I feel like they're sort of the cat lady type. Have you go into a house with somebody who owns like 14 cats? You're like, it stinks like cat piss in here. It's the worst.
Right.
But the cat lady doesn't notice. This is just her. This is her aura. I kind of feel like that's hipsters true. With all things sort of leather and earthy and BO.
Dude, I agree. I think, that smell that's kind of cloying that sticks to you after you've worked in a coffee shop all afternoon. Yeah. So back in the day when I was fully freelance, there was a coffee shop by our house where I would often set up shop there for the afternoon, and it was a really nice place to work, but I always had that coffee smell just embedded in my clothing for the rest of the evening. And yeah, I think if you're a hipster and that's kind of the world you live in, you just get used to it like the cat lady. And I don't know. I think that's the cost of doing business.
Cloying is a fantastic word, by the way. I applaud your use of that.
Yeah. I do like cloying, and I try to use it whenever I can.
But there are no cloying scents at Noah event venue places,
unless you want them.
You can import your own, because that's the thing is they're very sort of classy, basic spaces that you can dress up or dress down to your liking. So if you want to, bring in a little stink with you, it's all you hipster churches. But but they don't come with that. There's no sort of predetermined menu of smells, so you get to bring your own. So again, go to noaheventvenue.com/church and check that out.
Absolutely. Piper, great job as always. And tip of the cap to us for finally getting the name right after 6 months of sponsorship from Noah Events Venues. We're nothing if not, catering to the whims of our sponsors.
I went back and checked the contract, and it is written in there, get the name right. And I was like, we should probably honor that part of the contract.
Yeah, we should. You know what? But there's grace. There's grace given and received. Hopefully by the good people at Noah Events Venues, and hopefully we'll use one of those venues someday to host a huge Happy Rant mega live event. So,
or maybe just start like a Happy Rant church.
Dude, there you go. I mean, that's probably a theologically bankrupt idea, but
I mean, is it any worse than what was it? Church Mobile Global,
churchglobalmobile.com.
Mobile palm of your hand, Church Global with safety goggles. I can't remember the name of it, but it involved global and palm of your hand.
Yeah. Church Global. It was very early 2000s, and I loved it for that. But Piper, we need to talk about a movie that you and I just viewed, and we didn't view it together. I viewed it a couple of weeks ago, and you saw it last night. But the movie is A Star Is Born, starring Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. I talked about it briefly on one of our recent episodes, and you finally saw it. So I want to do a deep dive into this, but I have to tell you, last night when you texted that you had seen it and you were blown away by it, I was in the middle of watching the old A Star Is Born, the one with Chris Christopherson and Babs, Barbara Streisand. Very cool movie. We can kind of do some compare and contrast, but I want to get your initial impressions of the Bradley Cooper version, man. You were blown away by it, and I want to know why.
Well, so I went into it, I expected it to be enjoyable.
Yeah.
I didn't really have a sense of the sort of the gravity of it. I didn't. Mm-hmm. We should probably also say up front, if you haven't seen the movie and you intend to, we're not going to avoid spoilers. There are all sorts of spoiler alerts in this one. So fair warning, we'll probably ruin the movie for you if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I expected it to be more of a movie about music or, kind of about, music, romance, just sort of the themes that are easy to put your finger on.
Sure.
And I didn't expect it to be such a movie about, artistry and identity and kind of the hollowness of the search for those things and how different people come at them. I thought the relationship between Bradley Cooper and Sam Elliott as his older brother was kind of maybe the underrated thread of the movie to me.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
I mean, they just did a brilliant job of it being very clear that they loved each other. They hated each other. They were jealous of each other.
Yep.
There was, and it wasn't ever totally resolved.
Yeah.
But it was, I mean, as was almost nothing in the movie, I guess. But
yeah.
I don't know. I was completely caught off guard by the layers of quality and depth to the story, the acting, the performances, and just the music. Like, I thought the music would be fine. It's got Lady Gaga on it, and she's clearly talented, but who knew that Bradley Cooper can actually sing?
Right.
And then the songs themselves were like, oh, this is better than what people play on the radio right now, which I guess that's damning with faint praise, but it was excellent.
No, you're right, man. You're absolutely right. And I can't agree enough. And to me, like, watching that movie through kind of a Christian lens, I couldn't help but be struck with, you know, all the themes, all the, you know, the things that we, you know, observe and deal with as, you know, creative people who are also Christians. Like, that movie to me was sort of an extrapolation of what jealousy looks like if you don't check it, or an extrapolation of what, you know, greed looks like, and even the unfulfilling nature pipe of artistic integrity. And so artistic people tend to cling to that as, like, you know, that for some people that can be the ultimate, you know, goal. Like, I've maintained my integrity, you know, I haven't compromised the art, but at the end of the day, like, even that wasn't fulfilling, not even close, right? So all these things that the world kind of celebrates as fulfilling, you know, the purity of love, artistic pursuit. I think the movie did a pretty masterful job of deconstructing all those things as an end goal. And like I saw it 2 weeks ago, and I really haven't stopped thinking about it, you know, because I think it was so challenging. It was a movie that I wish I had seen when I was 22, you know, and just getting started as a writer, and, you know, being greedy, being jealous, like all these things that have caused me so much misery over the years. I think it would have been really helpful to see a movie like that at that age.
Yeah, I love what the point you just made about sort of how they didn't juxtapose two things against each other in terms of, like, this is the wrong way and this is the right way. Like, I posted on social media just that I love the movie and I thought it was the best movie I've seen this year. And, you know, a bunch of people agreed, and one guy he just sort of jumped in to engage conversationally, so it wasn't aggressive, but he just said, I couldn't tell what they were saying about, you know, when Lady Gaga's character goes from sort of the artistic singer-songwriter, soulful person to pop star. And he's like, I couldn't tell if they were saying that was a bad thing. Did that break up the relationship? Like, what was happening here? And I thought, I think that's kind of the point.
Dude, that is the point. Yeah,
because they weren't preaching that being a singer-songwriter artist is pure and pop is bad.
That's right.
The only thread that went through the movie consistently was, you have a voice and something to say, and people need to hear it. And so it wasn't about genre or style. It was about, I think, the one sort of redeeming quality they kept trying to put forth and often failing at was honesty.
Yeah, that's right.
At least that's what I was picking up on. And so I found it fascinating that they didn't sort of paint the pop picture in terms of, this is shallow and meaningless.
Correct.
And then this sort of, like, folk scene is meaningful.
Yeah.
They looked at both and were like, they both have people trying to do artistic things in them, for better and worse.
Well, and dude, isn't that so real and authentic even when we look at our own careers? Like, I can definitely look at books that I've done, especially like ghostwriting projects, where I go, man, in a perfect world, I wouldn't have had to have done that. You know, like, maybe working with the guy was miserable, or maybe the book that got produced wasn't one that I'm the proudest of. But, you know, I look back and I go, that bare minimum, it allowed me to feed my family for 6 months, right? You know, and in that, it's a good thing. So
it's like the scene with Bradley Cooper where he's got that corporate gig. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, it's the worst gig, but, you know, I've made peace with it. And he just sort of, he's a songwriter, he's an artist, but he's going to go play for, like, the 25th anniversary of some Fortune 500 company. And he's like, yeah, I've made peace with it and it pays. And, and again, that wasn't like you weren't supposed to get the sense that he's a sellout at that point.
Dude, right. It wasn't a referendum on whether you should or shouldn't do those jobs. And honestly, watching that movie as a fully grown-up person, as an adult, I think at age 22, I would have seen him doing that corporate gig and I would have been tempted to judge him. Like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You're a sellout. But, as an adult, I was like, yeah, people do things like that. And, your star doesn't burn forever. So there's probably some wisdom in, maximizing your earning power while the window is still open. Those are the kind of conversations that you have with yourself as an adult who's made, money creatively over the years. So yeah, it was just a really interesting movie, I think, to watch at this age. And, it was a reminder, Pipe, that there are still really cool movies coming out about people who aren't 22. You know what I mean? You tend to think of
superheroes.
Or superheroes. Yeah. You tend to think of, entertainment as the ultimate young man's game. And in some ways it is, but look at this character. Like this was a movie about a character who's like our age or even a little bit older. And it was a fascinating look at kind of that mid-career moment. And, the implication was that Gaga's character was a little bit younger. She was still living with her dad. She looked a little bit younger. I don't know how old Lady Gaga is in real life.
I guess she's 30-ish, early 30s.
Yeah.
Because I think she burst onto the scene pretty young. But
pretty young,
yeah. But they didn't make it clear. But I would have guessed that he was
a decade older than her.
Yeah, if she was like 25 in the movie, he was probably late 30s.
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that.
Exactly. So, have you seen the Streisand version?
I haven't. No.
Dude, it's pretty fascinating. So because we're old and we have kids and life is exhausting right now, we watch movies in chunks. So we watched the first half of the old A Star Is Born last night, and we're going to finish like late tonight, I'm sure. But it was really interesting. It was really 70s. There were definitely things from that version that the new version borrowed. The cinematography, I have to say, was really dope for a mid-70s movie. Like, they did a ton of those kind of gasp-inducing drone shots without drones, obviously, in the 70s. And, it really delivered visually. I think it would be interesting to compare the casting in the two movies. Like, to me, mid-70s Barbra Streisand was every bit as interesting as, like, 2018 Lady Gaga. Like, right down to their features. They're both, like, unconventionally beautiful. They've got some, like, really jarring features.
Well, yeah, one of the first things in the new version was sort of Lady Gaga's character. What was her name? Allie.
Yeah.
Dealing with being unconventionally beautiful, or just in her mind not beautiful at all. Right. Because she's got a big nose and so, like, there's a theme of Bradley Cooper's character kind of helping her recognize her talent and the fact that, like, you don't have to fit the Hollywood bill or the pop star mold. And that is interesting looking back and thinking, Barbra Streisand would absolutely fit the exact same conversations or the exact same script. Dude,
exactly. And then there you go. Like, that's another theme, I think, Piper, in the new movie, that the world would hold up feeling beautiful and feeling good about yourself as, if not an ultimate good, then maybe close to it. But again, there was another thing that wasn't ultimately satisfying for Lady Gaga's character, right? Even having a Bradley Cooper, affirm you almost constantly about your beauty, even having an industry affirm you. This didn't do it for her. There wasn't a moment at the end of the movie where Gaga's character was sitting contentedly in her home going, yes, I believe that I'm beautiful, because I think as broken people, we never really get there. We never really believe it, which is why we need Christ.
Yeah. And I think I'm trying to think of what the message of the movie was in terms of, like, what was delivered.
I'm not sure there was one, and I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it seems like if you're going to sum up the movie, it would be more like Vanity of Vanities than it would.
Yeah, most definitely.
Than it would, like, hang your hopes on this thing. So I think that's part of what I loved about it was, my head is already in the space of kind of dwelling on happiness and expectations and things like that, because it's a writing project I'm invested in right now. And so looking at a movie, and just my expectation going in was that there would be this is the thing that delivers happiness. Yeah. You know, whether it's a great loving relationship or stardom or beauty or setting aside all of those things and just being content with who you are.
Yeah.
And none of that was in there.
Yeah.
Although tastes of it work. Like, I will say one of the things that I loved most was the relationship between Gaga and Cooper was one that, I mean, it was contentious and it was a mess because he's a drug addict, alcoholic.
Yep.
She is a rising pop star. They're going separate ways career-wise.
Yep.
And there's never an indication that either of them gives up on the other or cheats on the other or finds a love interest elsewhere. They keep coming back to this fraught, messed up, terrible relationship that's also really genuine, and they keep recalling how they got to where they are. And you look at that and you go, that's something. So it's not, I guess it's not all vanity, but it also wasn't enough.
Dude, that's right. And it never will be enough, but it is something. And again, looking at these things through the Christian lens, I mean, I think you look at that and you go, you know, that's at some level proof that we're created in God's image. You know, the fact that these two broken people like saw enough value in each other to keep working on it and to stay loyal to each other. You know, and even the fight that they had in that bathtub scene was so jarring. I don't know if it struck you that way, but it definitely struck us. This was sort of the act 2 moment where they kind of break from each other, you know, and they have this huge fight in which both characters like really go for the emotional jugular of the other.
It was you
know?
Brutal.
It was brutal.
But not like a throwing, screaming things way, but just like the words they said were so savage.
Yeah, they were so savage, and it struck me, man, I don't know. By God's grace, I've never been, you know, in that moment with my spouse where I'm ready to like go for the jugular like that, and vice versa for her. But, you know, I can't imagine ever speaking to her in that way. But even in spite of that, like they came back, you know, they came back to each other. They tried it again. And yeah, that's something that I think walking away from the movie, you can go, you know, that's edifying, or that's interesting. And I would like to have that kind of resolve, you know. But
even that, like you remember the scene after that where he shows up at the dance studio to kind of, he comes back off the road. He's there to apologize. He kind of gives his best effort in an apology, but it's like the grizzled dude version. Yeah, you know, it's like, man, I said some things I shouldn't have said, kind of thing. And she forgives him, but it's not like a fling her arms around him and everything is washed away.
Dude, right.
Because then he's like, can I stay and watch? And she's like, why don't I meet you at home? And there's just sort of this like, the damage is done.
Dude, that's right. It's a very guarded, worldly, non-gospel version of forgiveness. And his apology was a very guarded, worldly, non-gospel version of an apology. You know, he wasn't saying, you know, look, I hate what I've done. I hate the ways I've hurt you, and these are those ways. You know, in the way that we think of, you know, repentance and apology going in a Christian context.
You didn't see that until he was kind of clean at the rehab center when he just broke down in that, you know, in that sort of like meeting area.
Yeah, that's right, man. That very like sterile kind of depressing meeting area where he really acknowledged, you know, I embarrassed you. I ruined your life. I ruined your career. And that was, isn't it winsome though? And interesting. There's so many things about this movie but I mean, it's really interesting to see real repentance in any context, you know. Again, as a believer, I look at that and I go, man, that's compelling because it's so rare. You know, it's so rare. It was in and out of the church.
It was real brokenness.
Yeah.
And you saw him change after that. But I mean, that was only like 15 minutes before the end of the movie.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And now this is, again, massive spoiler alert, where, I mean, the end of the movie ends with him having killed himself.
Yeah.
Because all the damage he had done, all the decisions he had made, while he regretted them, while he was broken over them, he couldn't come to terms with them.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
And he couldn't come to terms with her. And so they like the separation between them never was totally reconciled. Yeah. And so it's like every beautiful thing in the movie is offset with something broken. Yeah. And every broken thing is softened by something beautiful, but they're not. There's definitely no happy endings in this one.
Dude, definitely not. But it's funny, man. I tend to really be scared of movies that I know are going to be sad. And what's interesting is I didn't feel that way about this one. And what's interesting is I cry in almost every dramatic movie, and KK doesn't. But it was a role reversal this time. Like, she got really choked up at the end of A Star Is Born, and I didn't. Like, I was definitely moved by it, and I was challenged by a whole bunch of things in the movie, but I didn't have that, like, opening of the floodgates emotional response. And I want to make the argument too, Pipe, you know, in defense of what you just said. This is a movie where I think people should know the ending going in. Like, I think knowing that he's going to kill himself will actually make for a better viewing of the movie. Like, you can really enjoy and embrace and kind of enter into all the things that happen in the movie, knowing what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Because I think so many people, and I'm going to sound a little bit like a smug college professor right now. I think so many people watch a movie, quote unquote, for what's going to happen. And in doing so, they miss all the kind of brilliant things about the journey to get there. And I think this is definitely not a what's going to happen movie. And in fact, knowing what's going to happen makes it better. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I agree in the sense that it's the kind of movie you should watch twice. So if you watch it and you don't know what you're going to expect going in, you do the thing that you just described, where you're kind of, what is the culmination of this story? And you might miss a lot of the layers and subtlety along the way, which is why you should watch it twice. Yeah. If you know the ending going in, you can kind of appreciate those things more. So I think that either you watch it twice or you know the ending going in, but either way, you need to be able to kind of sit with a lot of the stuff that's just happening throughout the movie.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Most definitely. And you should sit with it. You know, one interesting question to ask, Piper, in this age of almost exclusively comic book movies getting a big release and a big budget, how refreshing that a movie like this gets made. You know, where do you think this movie will ultimately end up, like, legacy wise? Like, how important will this movie be in a few years after it's gone? Like, is this still going to be one that people talk about, or is it going to have a relatively short shelf life to you?
I mean, does anything have a long shelf life these days?
Yeah.
And I say that in more of like a depressed manner than anything, because because works of great creativity are forgotten fast. And I mean, like, for example, I'd say this movie and Manchester by the Sea are two of the best movies I've seen in the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. Manchester by the Sea came out, early 2017?
Yeah, not long ago.
And it almost doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
But it's the best thing Casey Affleck has ever done.
Yeah.
Creative wise. And
sure.
And it should be sort of the seminal movie of his career at this point. Yeah. But everybody's just constantly looking for what's next. So I mean, my guess is most people, even as significant as a movie like this is, are immediately looking for who's going to do the next A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the next actor who can direct, produce, perform the way Bradley Cooper did.
Right.
Which means we just, the pace of life is such, we don't get to enjoy something for any length of time. You try it and you move on. And so, I mean, which means that trying to define how it's going to fit in a legacy, I don't know, give it 20 years and see if anybody remembers it, I guess.
Dude, yeah, that's right. And maybe that conversation in and of itself is proof of how irrelevant I am. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think, and I'd be interested to hear your take on this. Like, I think you hit a certain age and you stop caring about what's next. I really don't care about what's next. And if a next thing comes out and it ends up being delightful or interesting on some level, I'm thankful for that. You know, I feel a sense of, that's great. That was unexpected. But yeah, I think I'm no longer thinking about what's next. Are you?
Not in the way I once did. I mean, there would have been a time where, like, in June, I would have known the Christmas the Christmas blockbuster movies coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sort of banking on what are the big things coming down the pipeline. And part of this, we've talked about this, the blockbuster thing has kind of gone away or changed shape. But yeah, a lot of it is just I've taken a lot more enjoyment in being surprised. Mm-hmm. Like, this movie was a surprise to me. I expected to enjoy it. I was hanging out with my cousin. We decided, hey, we're free Thursday. Let's grab dinner, go to a movie, and I was floored.
Yeah,
which is a way more enjoyable experience than anticipating, and being slightly let down.
Yeah, I agree, and that was the experience we had with the movie too. It was very much like, just go out on a whim, and we've got a free night, so let's catch this thing. It was a pleasant surprise, and in this era of huge franchise comic book type movies, it was a nice moment. It was nice to be reminded that, like, a movie can make you feel that way again. And maybe this.
I don't remember. I think it's probably been since Manchester by the Sea that a movie made me both feel and think the way that this one did. So I mean, it was definitely a both and. I mean, it's an emotional movie, but not in an emotionally manipulative way, because those movies don't make me feel anything besides annoyed. Yeah. But it's also, it made me think. Afterwards, I just was sort of sitting, kind of pondering and processing through things, because it's such an unconventional story or way of telling the story. And yeah, I mean, if one of those comes out a year, it feels like just an amazing sort of transcendent, victorious, experience to encounter it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I totally agree, man. And maybe there's not much more to say about this, but if you haven't seen A Star Is Born, you should see it. I think anyone who's sort of enamored with / addicted to fame, which honestly is probably a lot of guys in our tribe. I don't think a lot of people would say it out loud, but I think, a lot of guys, and 10, 15 years ago, it was the blogosphere. Now it's social media. But, I think a lot of the people that we follow on social media, pastorally or Christian celebrity wise, you do it so that you can dream about the fame for yourself one day. And, watch the movie, watch it with an eye toward.
It's just sanctified ego.
Yeah, all of that. It's sanctified ego. That's right. Interesting stuff, Piper. Let's stay in the ego space for a minute, and let's. That was maybe a clumsy segue, and maybe one that I'll regret. But
I don't know. I thought it was pretty solid.
Yeah. There's a personality, and I have to say this personality is like Venn diagram wise, like barely a part of what I would call our tribe. This is a guy. He's got a mega church in the Chicago area. I've known this name for a while, but I really don't know much of anything about him or his church, except that I know there's minimal overlap with kind of the Reformed superstar tribe. Has MacDonald? It's James MacDonald, right? I'm blanking on the first name. James MacDonald, has he spoken at like some of our conferences, quote unquote?
Oh yeah.
What's his history?
Or not the super Reformed ones, like Together for the Gospel, because those, they build high fences. But the early gospel coalitions he was involved in, and then he sort of progressively moved himself away from them. He and Driscoll were kind of on the same track in a lot of ways, where MacDonald was, aggressive personality, dynamic preacher, big church. Yeah. Driscoll sort of went to him as a mentor, and there were some of us watching from the sidelines in this going,
That's not going to end well.
That is a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And I think they both ended up influencing each other negatively in terms of sort of the running the church as a heavy-handed CEO kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in both cases, what was confusing was that the message they were preaching was, generally speaking, really good. Driscoll put his foot in some things here and there, and I'm sure MacDonald has as well. But in terms of just pretty powerful biblical preaching, MacDonald's got decades under his belt of doing that really well. But like leadership, personality, ego, church growth wise, it's been what I would consider a downward slide.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it's one, and we both communicated this off the air, like just looking at the MacDonald arc, you didn't have to be super prophetic to look at that and go, yeah, this is probably not going to end in a great place. And true to that, his church is suing some bloggers. So some writers online, I'm not familiar with this blog, but they wrote some challenging things apparently about how MacDonald runs his church, and now MacDonald is suing them, which is a really interesting move. And I think that's, with the few remaining minutes we have, that's probably what we want to talk about. Just the propriety, I guess, or how it looks to the world of, this megachurch pastor who's ostensibly very successful suing these bloggers. So what do you make of this?
It's like 2 or 3 bloggers and a freelance journalist. Well, to clarify, they started the blog specifically to record what they perceive as the failings of James MacDonald and Harvest Bible Chapel. So I mean, it's like a takedown blog.
Yeah, it's a takedown blog, which is a thing that we've seen some of over the past decade.
And when they started it, it was kind of under the auspices of, we've tried to address this to the church leadership and have essentially been either shut down or kicked out, or it was not received well. And again, this is these people's version of a story. So, we're not here as reporters. Clearly, nobody would mistake us for that. Just trying to give the context. But everything they did, so the website was called The Elephant's Debt, which is a play on the Elephant Room, which is a thing that MacDonald started, I don't know, 10 years ago. And and then the millions of dollars of debt that Harvest had taken on to expand campuses and things like that. And then leadership issues and character issues amongst leadership and all of these different things. And they sort of folded it all into this blog. And then apparently there's a freelance journalist who had reported some of that same stuff, maybe for Christianity Today or something like that. And so, they're all being sued by Harvest now for the claim being that something like 2,000 people left the church because of this website, which meant, with that, there's a financial implication, there's a reputation damage, there's all that stuff. Yeah.
Fascinating, man. What do we think of takedown blogging and lawsuits, I guess, in light of Matthew 18? I guess you can make
or like the Beatitudes.
Or the Beatitudes, yeah, exactly. I mean, and maybe in a totally kind of grace-giving environment, you make the assumption that, these takedown bloggers tried to, address this stuff personally with MacDonald and were rebuffed, or I don't know. There's lots of assumptions that you make before you get to, like, I think the answer here is to start a takedown blog. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, the Bible's pretty clear. Believers shouldn't sue believers. Yeah. I think it's in one of Paul's letters where he basically says, you guys have taken this to the courts, and look at the witness you are to the world. You really should have just settled this amongst yourselves quietly with, amongst church leadership with the grace of Christ. Now, that has been abused by church leaders who then don't take things to the law that they should, like child abuse, for example, or sexual abuse. Sure. But this is speaking specifically of lawsuits. So, I mean, I think it's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Now, I could see suing to recoup measurable damages in a different instance,
Right.
like if a former employee has embezzled funds or something like that, sort of a suing to recoup a loss. Mm-hmm. But that's a financial transaction. That's not a defamation lawsuit or something like that. Yeah. I don't know. This whole thing seems to be born out of ego to me, where ego started the whole thing, probably on both sides, where there was ego involved in the decisions that frustrated these bloggers. There's ego by the bloggers to feel like we have an obligation to blow this thing up.
Yeah.
And then neither side will stand down. Like we're back to the OK Corral, except internet version now. And it's it if anybody remembers the story of the OK Corral, it was a bloodbath where most people died.
That's right, man. That's right. Yeah, I think internet OK Corral may be even worse than Faye arty hipster OK Corral. But I look at situations like this, Pipe, and I just go, come Lord Jesus. This is to me, obviously being on the outside of it, just one of the most hopeless things imaginable.
Yeah, it kills me because you look at it and you go, all right, guys, who wins?
That's right.
If you win $7 million, Jesus loses, the church loses, your reputation loses, these bloggers lose. They're so sort of hyper-focused on the offense that they can't see. I mean, it feels a little bit like if we decided to get in a nuclear war with North Korea because they offended us.
Yeah.
Now, they're offensive, they were threatening, whatever, but look at the damage that's being done here. Nobody wins if this happens. Now, that's an extreme example, but
sure,
it's so asinine. Mm-hmm. It would be so easy to just ignore it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't forgive, that's between you and God. Mm-hmm. But you can ignore. You can pretend it didn't happen. You can handle these things. You can just not handle these things. I mean, and one of the things I'm thankful for about my dad is the way that he has handled, just hateful people over the years. Yeah. Which is, if it's a person with whom he has a relationship, he addresses it privately.
Personally.
Yeah. It goes to them, phone call, in person, email, whatever it is. If he's going to address it publicly, he goes to them first and even asks their permission. And I know of multiple instances where that's happened. Yeah. Or if it's somebody he doesn't know, he just treats it like it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
And I look at that and I go, who wins when that happens? Everybody.
Yeah. That's right.
He has to absorb the insult. But if you have confidence in your ministry, in your faithfulness and whatever, then the insult is just sort of they are wrong. And I have good people around me who are saying it's okay, that's a false statement or whatever. And this is so, it is disheartening because Harvest is going to lose, Christian Witness is going to lose, somebody's going to lose a lawsuit, which means there's going to be a lot of expense involved. Yeah. And everybody's already lost because this thing has dragged on for 7 years now.
Yeah. No, tough situation, man, all the way around. And I mean, I think on the level of A Star Is Born, by way of a last statement of sorts, because I know we've got to hop out and get to our next meetings. It just makes me really grateful that my pastor doesn't want to be famous. There's no public persona there that he's trying to balance with his private ministry. Mm-hmm. And I think that just decomplicates things so much. I mean, there's not even a Twitter persona that he's maintaining, he keeps it really lo-fi and man, it seems to uncomplicate things. That's not to say that there's not issues within our church, but you can take the very large issue of a famous person's public persona and just put it on the back burner. And man, I'm grateful for that. Good stuff this morning, Pipe. Really enjoyed chopping it up with you about A Star Is Born. Again, if you haven't seen it, check it out. We had one very important and divisive topic here this morning that we didn't get to, that we weren't able to get to because of time constraints. We will get to that in another episode. And we have done what we often do, Pipe, which is wander to and fro throughout these topics. And until next time, Rachel the Held Evans.
The Happy Rant is brought to you by Resonate Recordings.
If you go to resonaterecordings.com, you can see the full range of services they offer. So if you're considering starting a podcast, they are the ones we recommend going with. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see their prices, to connect with them and ask any questions, and to see what they can do to help you launch, edit, master, and improve your podcast. Again, go to resonaterecordings.com to see what they can do to help you launch and improve your podcast.